Hey guys, welcome back to the Mind Body broadcast with Austin and Marty. And today we're going to talk about meal timing, meal frequency, topics related to that kind of, or as Marty called it, how to make meal timing sexy
That's
again.
right. That's right. Bringing meal
But
timing back.
yeah, but as you might be disappointed by the end of the podcast, it's probably not as sexy as you think. Um, so stick with us, guys. Kind of figure out our thoughts on it, and there are definitely a lot of different ways you can go about this, and we can kind of talk about what the differences are and how much, or I should say, how much difference that will actually make in your progress.
That's probably what I would say first is that people might be disappointed in terms of either with what they have been doing or were doing or want to be doing. But if anything, the more that I talk to it about with my clients, they're almost relieved that they're like, oh, really? So there's so many options that can still yield well over 90% results without any of the stress, without the worry of the catabolism and am I maximizing muscle protein synthesis, it's just everything like that. So I'm real excited for this one. I think it should be not only some myth busting, but it could be saving some people a lot of stress and a lot of worry that they just flat out don't need.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's a lot like a lot of other topics too. It can come down to your schedule. I mean, I know we talked about that a lot with the training on the training episode.
Right.
We talked about how, you have to. We don't live in a bubble, so I mean, there are other life things we have to take care of, and our schedule might somewhat dictate our recovery ability and how we eat. Frankly, I know a lot of people. I see this a lot. They get so stressed out because they can't get all their meals in because maybe they are maybe it's their job. Like for example, I have some people that are nurses
Mm-hmm.
that work in in the ER, for example. Well, they'll get a break too, but it's not like they can't just walk away at any time, and it gets very chaotic.
That's right.
So, and so somebody like that eating every 2 hours or every 2.5 hours would just be completely unrealistic. It would never work.
That's right.
So rather than stressing out about it, there are definitely other options. So, what are some of the things? Let's say we'll do some scenarios because a lot of this is really scenario related. But
Mm-hmm.
what are what are some of the things you would do for somebody that's a typical 9 to 5 job?
See that's when outside of you're at a, we'll say 9 to 5, we'll assume office job just for a quick second. Like sure, you're sitting down all day and you might not necessarily get the NEAT that you would, the non-exercise activity thermogenesis that you would walking around with a more active job like a nurse. But you got usually outside, unless some of your employers are sadistic, you've got much better schedule to eat, so you can kind of implore the eat every 2 to 3 or whatever you want to break your meals into meal frequency, and that will just keep you more streamlined for energy, keep you more streamlined for food. Your work capacity won't go down, and also I've found that's more of the dream for trying to figure out digestion. Like if let's say a client says, "Hey, after around 3 o'clock, I'm feeling a little bit bloated, a little bit gassy," you'd be like, "Okay," and then you can kind of pinpoint that it was probably something they ate about 30 minutes or an hour before, and you kind of go that way as opposed to them loading up on kind of everything when they have sporadic jobs. Like nurses or whatever. But if you have that 9 to 5, you can definitely then either have your breakfast and then 2.5 hours later at your break eat, then the next at lunch eat, and maybe if you have another break before you finish work eat, and then it can kind of depend upon your training as well. And that's kind of the we'll say the number one hot topic that always comes up in the bodybuilding circuit for meal frequency and meal timing is the round workout or the peri-workout stuff, right? And that's I love the different opinions on it. Like we had carb backloading was in the limelight for a bit there. We had always the big post-workout meal was huge for a bit, and then I believe it was Chris Aceto was one of the first people that kind of jumped in and said, no, the pre-workout meal has been, and people were like, oh my God, what's going on? And then I remember when
Yeah.
you'd be around the same time as me, Austin, when, what the heck was it called? Vitargo originally came out.
Oh yeah.
Exactly, right? And then people were like, what is this? And then before you know it, people weren't just drinking amino acids during their workout. Now they were finally putting the carbohydrates in with it. And I remember that book. I think it was called Nutrient Timing. It was a little skinny book. I think it's a Dr. Ivy or something like that. It was really skinny. And it was recommending that during the workout, you have protein powder with Gatorade. And I was like, okay, because it had all this. And so this book is so old. And it still has everything pretty much right. Like, it's not talking about branch chains. It's not talking about cluster dextrin or highly branched cyclic dextrin. It's talking about just carbohydrates, not necessarily Gatorade. I think that was the only one thing I could friggin' afford when I was 20. And then like the full spectrum of the amino acids. I was like, this makes a lot of sense. But also they drove home that you need that in a sense, right? And that's one wicked thing we can go into here with the meal timing and the meal frequency is that you obviously want that steady stream of nutrients kind of coming in and out. So during the work day, like on the average 9 to 5, it's kind of like that is we'll say the ideal situation for the working person in a sense of if you are on a schedule, because then you can eat and you will get that more streamlined energy. I know there's a lot of debate around what to do at nighttime because that's what do you call it? Usually we'll say people's snacky time.
Oh,
yeah, and that's kind of where I like to take a lot of liberty, like to give the clients a lot of liberty there, because I'm in the camp of I usually don't eat breakfast when I wake up. It's just not my thing. I usually like to eat the more of my meals at nighttime. And if you would have said this probably about 10 years ago, I would have been, but the breakfast is the most important meal of the day. And I know everyone's heard that one, 40,000 times a week oh man. So, but I can very firmly tell you that there was no progress lost when my breakfast wasn't there. So, yeah, so basically you can pick, the bigger breakfast with however many meals per day. And so I'll ask you this because I know you got the best answer for this. But how many meals a day do you eat? And then how many meals a day does someone else or anyone else need to eat to make sure that they maximize their potential in terms of muscle mass?
So, like, me personally, at least just from my experience,
right,
I do pretty good on 4 to 5 meals a day.
See, awesome.
And that might seem low. I don't know. I mean, honestly, lately I've actually been leaning towards 4, believe it or not. And I got up to my biggest, heaviest, and leanest off-season weight. So there you go.
And that's awesome. I'll just say right there, like you say that 5 years ago because of how I know you look and how your size and like straight. I would say, no, that's gotta be shit. Come on, he's gotta be 7 meals. Gotta have like four during workout meals. Like, yeah, like that's awesome.
Right. Yeah. So but at the end of the day, it's coming down to. I think probably a lot of the challenging meal frequency or challenging the ideas of meal frequency probably came about with the If It Fits Your Macros crowd.
Absolutely.
And I would think. I mean, like, obviously there's a ton of overlap there because talking about different sizes in meals and how many meals a day you need because they would maybe want to use all their macros in a huge meal to make whatever ridiculously decadent protein, cake or whatever. But like I said, just from my experience, most guys, let's say if just somebody doesn't really have limitations on, they can pretty much get their meals in regardless. They make it happen. I mean, 4 to 5 meals a day. If it's a digestion, something to do with digestion where we need to maybe spread the meals out a little bit more, we can do that. But I've just noticed the 4 to 5 works for most people's life. It's not overly difficult to prep for. It's not the 7 to 8 meals a day. And you'd be surprised. I mean, cutting down to 4 to 5 for one, it can give you more sleep because you don't have to stay up all night and eat.
That's right.
And and it's just less stressful to prep for. And then, like we talked about before the show, from an actual science standpoint, right now, most of the research shows if we ate 3 meals a day, maybe two is a stretch, but 3 meals a day, we're pretty much going to maximize muscle protein synthesis, assuming assuming you're getting enough protein for your lean body mass, you're going to be getting enough. I think people forget that. Let's say, like, a good example I like to use is if you were to use a glucose, measure your blood glucose, because
Right.
now there's been a lot of people doing that now, which is cool because it's a great health marker to use. So it normally takes about around 2.5 hours, give or take, to actually return to normal. Um, After you eat a meal. But we also know that carbohydrates are the fastest digesting nutrient out of the three macros that we're going to eat.
Hmm.
So if it takes blood glucose 2.5 hours or so just to return for that insulin to shuttle it out, then you got to figure there's got to be protein in our bloodstream still that digests slower.
Oh gosh,
Um,
yes, of course. It is even still sitting in the guts, let alone made it to the GI yet.
right.
Yeah.
Right. Yes. Yes. And that's exactly it. And you're right. And there's still protein that hasn't even been fully digested in the stomach. Because I mean, there's a reason that your stomach tends to look flatter and different in the morning than it does in the evening. It's not just because of water weight. I mean, some of it water, yes, but there's food. I mean, there is food and there's slight distension potentially, but like I said, 3 meals a day would probably be the minimum I would ever suggest to anyone. Um, and then beyond that point, like I said, it's just going to depend on schedule, digestion. But like I said, that's really where the science is at right now. I haven't seen anything else new lately that would lead me to believe differently.
No, that's right. And I kind of almost did stumbled upon not only that side of if it fits your macros, what you're talking about in terms of the bolus food, because I was so busy as a personal trainer that I would wake up, I had to have this huge meal because I knew that I didn't necessarily have a chance to be able to get to eat again, and I would maybe be able to squeak in a snack or two during the middle of the day, and I would have to combine about 3 meals at night, and I'd be like, oh my god, this is years ago before I read any of the prevalent research. And I said, oh, my progress is gonna go down. I'm during a fat loss phase, like this is terrible. So I was having to combine 3 meals at night, or at least make one super meal and try to eat it for as long as I could. And yeah, my belly puffed out. Yeah, I didn't really feel that good. It wasn't necessarily force feeding. Like I wasn't making it so that it was ultra painful, but it was a lot of food at once. And sure enough, I just kind of put my head down for my own progress, just kind of followed the plan and whatever. And sure enough, the results started coming, and it was not even close to slow. I would have said it would have been, especially from where I was at the time, very realistic. And I was like, holy crap, maybe there's on to something with this. And then the more and more the science came out that you don't need to have the 5 to 7 meals per day with the every 2 hour intervals within. If you don't, your metabolism will slow down, or that you're anything else like this. Now, saying that, I would recommend to having some kind of amino acids during the day, and what I mean by that is protein, because even with some of the intermittent fasting people, like yes, you can fast and then have your protein in there. There's still when you break the fast, you're usually having protein at most of those meals, if not every single meal, which I recommend during that time, outside of maybe some fruit. Because it is the way that I was explaining amino acids and protein is it's just like a bucket with a hole in it. You've only got this certain amount that kind of sticks in there, and then once the bucket gets drained of the amino acids, the hole at the bottom drains out. Then it's going to find it from one of two places, either your muscle or your diet. So that's one of the few things you can keep replenishing from the diet is the protein, because the fat is everywhere. It's on you. Like unless you were 0%, you got it on you, and your body can go, oh, okay, I can use that as an energy substrate. Along with carbohydrates. Carbohydrates can be stored inside, muscle glycogen, sometimes liver glycogen, but the fat will be there if your body really needs it. But the protein is the one that you need a little bit to be a little bit more on top of. But having said that, it still takes a great amount of time for your body to drain that bucket. Because like the thing was, for a while, and I got super caught up into this, was you need to eat as soon as you're done that last rep. Like pretty much the Pop-Tarts beside you, and you're finishing that leg press, and you gotta have that rammed into your mouth as soon as because that was the fear mongering at the time, was this anabolic window, right? And I don't know if they ever did the studies on this. Like, what did the guys not do? Eat? They didn't. Did they not eat for 4 hours before training, then train for an hour and
Right.
a half, 2 hours, and then see where their protein synthesis, protein turnover was? Like, how did they do that to say that it was mandatory? I bet that was just something fictitiously made up because every last drop of the science that's come back that said if you eat hour and a half, 2 hours before the meal, and you train, or sorry, not before the meal, before you train, and then you wait even an hour and a half, you're not compromising anything in terms of
Right.
the potential to gain muscle or to lose fat. There's no gains be gone or anything like this. And that's awesome because I know quite a few people. Like, let's say you have a really really hard leg day and your CNS is going pretty crazy, your body's going pretty crazy. You might not necessarily be ultra hungry as soon as you're done. Some are, and that's cool, but there's a lot that aren't. So therefore, like,
Yep.
you worrying about that, oh God, am I going to get that meal in? That is probably doing way more damage than the actual meal not being had at that exact time ever dreamed of doing.
Yep. Yep. You're exactly right. And on top of that, now with as many people that are using intra-workout nutrition, that makes that post-workout timing even less important. You
Exactly.
know,
Exactly.
yeah. And because I mean, I think just about everybody, I won't say everyone, but I would say probably 90% of people that train relatively intensely use an amino acid product during their training. So, I mean, just right there alone, you're already putting amino acids in your bloodstream. They're there for repair. So even if you don't get that post-workout meal right away, that's going to hold you over just fine for, for whatever amount of time within reason that you need to go before you eat. Because um, I like, like I'll do whole food meal post workout.
That's right.
That's what I've been doing. Yeah, I mean that's what I've done for a long time. I mean I did shakes for a while, and I will like if it's just a time thing. But I've done whole food meals post workout for pretty much as long as I can remember. So
But Austin,
my
that's wrong, Austin. That's wrong, right? Yeah.
right, yeah, it is totally wrong. But lucky for me, I had my intra workout. So
That's right.
you know, and the whole intra workout topic too is kind of I mean, there are two sides to it because I think that there are people that probably don't need any really elaborate intra workout.
Oh,
As far
definitely,
as like,
definitely.
yeah, as far as like the crazy amount of carbohydrates and things like that, I don't think that it's necessary for everyone because in reality, we really don't deplete quite as much glycogen as we like to think we do during
Oh,
weight training.
definitely, definitely. Well,
So,
I just a side note there. I've seen bikini girls been given right off the hop, and so I really shouldn't even say bikini girls. Let's just say people that want to enter a bikini competition for the first time, given refeed meals right out of the gate on their leg days. I'm like, there is nothing to replenish, let alone deplete. So I could not possibly agree with there's it's too much romance going on behind the intra workout stuff, right? Like the pre, the peri, and the post. Like it got out of control. It's still a little bit out of control. It's better, but there were people foregoing food for friggin' during and around workout stuff. Like they were like you add up some of this stuff. Like if you want to add in like the typical, well I won't say typical. Let's say you've got glutamine, you've got essential amino acids. You've got extra leucine in there. You've got the citrulline malate maybe in there. Maybe you've got beta alanine in there. And then you got your pre-workout with the pre-workout carbohydrates. And then you got your fancier carbohydrate in there. You got this stuff can add up financially to more than a friggin' coach ever dreamed of being a month.
oh yeah, oh yeah, because you can start getting into like cluster dextrins that are really expensive, certain carb powders, things like that, which I do think, just being completely honest and transparent, I mean, I do think there is a difference in the carb sources that you can drink at your workout, just because, I mean,
Definitely.
I've seen them have different effects on digestion and things like that. But with that being said, you can, I think people miss the boat on their nutrition as a whole get into some just crazy elaborate intra-workout shakes. I did let's see, I'm trying to think of what it was. It's probably a couple months ago because my training schedule will change every once in a while. Like I'll go from training at one time of the day and have to change it. So I was training in the mornings, not super early, mid morning, probably like 10 o'clock or so, and then I would do I would eat around noon. That would be my first meal, but I would have an intra workout, and my calories weren't that high at the time. So I was like, I don't really want to drink these carbs during training because I'd really rather eat, you know?
Right.
So I took them out, and you would think, oh no, training fasted with just amino acids. Well, actually, I was having hydrolyzed protein. That's what I was having.
PeptoPro, got it. Yep.
Yep. So that's what I did, and I'll tell you what, I probably had the best pumps that I ever had during training. So that goes back to another topic that people talk about a lot in terms of, oh my gosh, if I don't eat carbohydrates before my workout, or if I don't eat carbohydrates in all my meals or during the day or whatever, people tend to forget that our body stores glycogen, and our body also has metabolic processes to extract that glycogen and use it if we need it. So that's another point I make to people, is that you don't necessarily need carbohydrates in every meal. And in fact, I usually would, suggest against that, for multiple reasons, insulin sensitivity and things like that. But, it's, people forget all those metabolic processes and how our body is completely capable of giving us an energy substrate of some kind. It knows how to burn fats as energy. It knows how to burn carbohydrates as energy. You can function on either just fine, assuming that you have a normal metabolic capacity.
Absolutely. I would even venture to say it's not so much that people forget, it's that others will lead them to believe that they need this, where it's because you got to think, and that's why there are people like us out there, is that we kind of decipher the not necessarily scientific data, but the nutrition information out there, and kind of explain, saying, no, that's really not how it works. Because your body is a frigging storage tank. If it had no fat on it, I think we would not make it. Like, we wouldn't have made it as a species. Like, so like it's that if you, like, exactly, and not only that, but your body is trained in that way too. So you would not say you would get away, but like how you can wake up, have that hydrolyzed casein or isolate, and then go train. Yeah, because your body goes, it knows that it's probably going to see training again. It's been training for a while. It's kind of ready for war in a sense like that too, because training fasted, like let's say brand new, you've never worked out, you jump up, you go training fasted, you are going to get crushed into the ground because you probably don't have any significant amount of muscle glycogen, let alone muscle built up, and
Right.
you'll wear out. But then it's not only that, but then you can use that as a technique for, you can do some fasted training in a sense for fat loss purposes. You could even jump up and use a carb powder with the hydrolyzed caseinate to get even, like, there's so much you can do, and this is why I said at the beginning, I think this is going to be a little bit exciting, because yes, it is confusing, and yes, there are a lot of options, but you have to try so hard to screw it up. If you eat the same amount of your foods that are healthy, I'm not going to say clean eating just because I have the connotation, but I'll get shot behind the computer for God's sake. But if you follow your friggin' meal plan and you eat entirely based upon personal preference, and it's 3 or more meals per day, you will see outstanding results. And the rest is so esoteric and so minutia that it just doesn't need to be. Like, if I had to give you and anybody else some guidelines, it's don't be starving during your workout. Yeah, it sucks. Like, let's say if you want to work out at 3 p.m. and you are starting to get really hungry mid-workout, that is probably that's going to take away your mind at least. You're going to be like, oh my God, I'm hungry, I don't know. So that's going to take, even if you could do the work capacity, that's going to make you float. So I would say eating anywhere between an hour and a half and an hour before the workout, whatever makes your stomach feel good, and then eat within that hour and a half afterwards, sure. But definitely don't focus on the the intra-workout stuff right out of the hop. It does have a lot of potential behind it, but the need for it is a little bit ridiculous. And these are the same kinds of people that are being led to believe, either by supplement stores, by supplement brands, I don't know who's really still, putting out this information, but that's one of the last things on there. Just supplements as a whole, but I know this is on meal frequency and meal timing, but I just wanted to kind of say that there too. But that would be the thing that would rotate the most for your meal frequency, would be obviously your job. Like if you have a sporadic amount of hours or whatever, and so just think back to my story there about me having to combine 3 meals. Like, so for nurses, shift workers, all that, it's okay. And yeah, it will suck sometimes if you have a busy night, busy day, and you can't get your meals in, and you generally are like, frig, I can't do. It's okay. Try to get them in before bed, type of thing. Maybe even make them up the next day, because people seem to like to think that we run off of a 24-hour period. We don't. The human body is significantly smarter than that. And so I know coaches, like I have done it here and there too, but like you can even take your weekly macronutrient or caloric total and play around with that. And if it's even relatively close to the same, that will be guiding for you for sure. Like, and that's where, and I think this is probably still, even now with a lot of my more advanced clients, I still have to remind them that, like, if they eat late at night, not necessarily just carbohydrate, but they eat late, and they're like, oh my God, Marty, I'm up 3 pounds. I'm like, yeah, because you ate 3 meals before bed. And they go, oh yeah, that's right. It's weight. So that's not you could even have lost fat and been up 2 pounds because you downed all your meals, because your body is still sitting in there and your body's not used to that. So that's between the gauges of what progresses or not. Just focus on those bigger things, so that, like, for you losing your mind over meal frequency, that to me, that I've seen that wreck more people's progress than the, let's say, the missing a meal or whatever. I've seen more people, let's go with that. I've seen more people like be more relaxed, be like, yeah, I didn't get a meal in today, or didn't get my full amount of carbs in today, and them have better progress than the people that are worrying all the time and screwing up cortisol and screwing up sleep, and that will really start wrecking your progress.
So you're saying thermodynamics are the most important thing?
Thermodynamics are the most important thing? I don't know. What do you think I'm saying?
Yeah, that's it. It's
exactly. Exactly.
We start everything with calories in and calories out. We start everything there, and then it's a priority list, of course, because I mean, hey, both of us work with people of different caliber of client, not necessarily because of their effort, but because of what they're trying to accomplish and what they are willing, how meticulous they're willing to be. So there's plenty of situations where, hey, I'm taking everything down to the nth degree of timing the meals around training, proper carbohydrate and fat timing as much as we possibly can, et cetera. And then there are other times where it's simply not worth, like you said, it's just simply not worth the stress that it causes, when in reality they can get pretty similar results with just, with making sure they hit their macronutrients. You have protein in every single meal, and then from there you can do some really easy basic stuff. Time your carbohydrates around your workout, for example. That's really easy to do. It's not difficult if you can follow a meal plan, or if you're counting your macros. That's simple. In really basic, right now, I think most people know, hey, we want to probably have the majority of our carbohydrates around our training in some way, shape, or form. And outside of that, we might want to keep our carbohydrates a little bit lower during the day, or maybe not, or maybe have more protein and fat-based meals. Just that way we can not have our, dare I say, have our insulin and blood sugar go up, but, to maintain insulin sensitivity over time. So that's just very basic and, very basic, vague way to look at it. But yeah, you're 100% correct. You're splitting hairs. So how much are you willing to, how much are you willing to split those hairs before it's going to drive you absolutely crazy?
Absolutely. And then so to go, yeah, I can't tell you how many times I've heard the splitting hairs stuff. It's It's I think it was John Berardi or something like that. It's called Majoring in the Minor. And it's like one of those pyramid things. Like I love that Eric Helms has his nutrition and training pyramids and like the whole like the foundation, right? Like that's, I know everyone's heard this on every other friggin' podcast, but if you don't have that damn foundation, you are not going to build the house, right? And where this gets misconstrued is, again, that's why I like that you mentioned the sexy thing at the beginning, because this is not that sexiest stuff. And you're looking for, because I know I was, and I still would investigate a tactic or a, by the way, if you take, because the thing that was out a little while ago was leucine. If you take 1 to 2 grams of leucine per meal, it'll really increase your anabolism. And I was like, oh man, they're still doing this stuff, eh? And I know that everyone wants to maximize this. They want to do it perfectly but that is super cool if you have everything else so frigging in line. And I don't mean just your bodybuilding, and I don't mean just your training, your nutrition. I mean your mind, your emotional space,
Yep.
because I have personally gone very, we'll say, borderline crazy figuring this stuff out when, let's say, my finances were not that good, because it takes away from a lot of the process, and then before you know it, you're not enjoying things, right? The people, like the more times I've seen, and this, I love this, the more times I've seen, I've trained couples where, let's say, it'll be the wife that comes to me and the husband will do it with her as a support, and he won't really care. He'll just kind of eat what she eats or whatever, and due to his not caring and just coming in and giving in the gym, they'll see more results than the woman that's like, oh my God, it's 30 minutes post-meal and I haven't had my banana. And like, he's like, nah, who cares? We'll eat when we get home. And she's, no, this is important. And this is not stuff they've gotten from me, but either the magazines, a friend, whoever, you name it. And the husband will kill it. Just kill it. Like the strength will go up, the body fat will go, and you even reverse it. Because I don't want to be sexist here and say this because males, due to their having naturally higher testosterone. But I've seen guys train with me that'll do it, and then the wife will just follow it, and they'll crush it. And they're like, well, what are they doing that I'm not? And I said, no, it's what you're doing that they're not, and it's worrying. And that will. I know that's why I love that this is the Mind and Body broadcast, because the mental concepts behind all this stuff. And then it can also go the other way too, when I say mental concepts, are that how the new pre-workout is sexy. The new, like I remember when it went from Waxy Maize to Vitargo, and then Vitargo 2.0 came out, and then highly branched cyclic dextrin came out, and then cluster dextrin. So, and you can get all caught up and say, I remember when the creatines came out, it was like creatine mono, then creatine ethyl ester, and then crealkaline, and then everything. It's like, oh, and then you get so caught up in it that you forgot to have your friggin' chicken and rice. and it's like, and it's just gone so far away from all the other things that kind of, built the bodies for forever. Like everyone will talk about, oh, the condition in the 90s, oh, this and that and all the work, but it's such a, I don't want to be shocked too much when I say it, but let's say a lazy society now, where we do have so much frigging information on the internet that we didn't have in the 90s in terms of readily available. It was there in us. Like we've come up quite some time. Yes, we've come a long ways. I get it. But what's readily available, how quickly you can get a really good meal plan at like eatthismuch.com and all those places, or even going on MyFitnessPal and putting in your height and your weight, you'll find something that will work. But then to focus on the timing, like I wish there'd be an app. I don't know if there is. That says meal frequency 3 to 7. just like 3 to 7 meals per day, and then go, what the F does that mean? Because in its personal preference. And so let's even talk about digestion there. Like for instance, I know guys, some of my bigger guys, 240, 5'8", that can gain off of barely 3,000. And they don't want to have to split that into 7 meals, because then it feels like they're eating every small bit. And then to flip that script, the same person might love eating every 2 hours because it feels like they're stoking them. Whatever works. I hope I say this another 7 times, that whatever works for you in your work life, your personal preference. No one wants to be, well, okay, maybe there are, but I don't think there wants to be someone with their friends, with their family, whatever, and having to pull over to the side of the road because the watch says, okay, it's chicken and rice time. When let's say they're 20 minutes away from somewhere they could sit and eat. Like I'm talking, and I'm even talking to competitive bodybuilders. Like I would never have one of my guys. It's like, oh, it's 3 o'clock, and I said, yeah, you should eat around mid-afternoon. They're going, oh man, it's past 2:30. Marty gonna get mad. And no, Marty's fine, thanks. Marty's waiting on his meal too because he's stuck in traffic, for God's sake. So yeah, do you still hear lots of that stuff too about guys being a little bit, even girls being a little bit too freaky with that? I'll say this too, is that I will give people, especially I'll give ladies, a 4 meal a day plan, and they'll go, really, only 4? Like, that's how bad, we'll say, this got, or how misconstrued this got. They'll go, what, really? I thought I was supposed to have 6 or something. Like, I'm like, what is one of those 6? A cucumber? Are you calling one cucumber a meal? Right. Yeah. So what are you still seeing out there in terms of this stuff?
It's definitely still there. I think it's definitely gotten better, which is good. It's good to see. It's definitely gotten better. But with the women especially, I'm not, to single them out just because they inherently they eat lower calories than men typically, and especially in fat loss phase or in a contest prep. We talked about muscle protein synthesis. Guess what? If you're eating 6 meals a day and you're only eating 120 grams of protein a day, you're probably not even eating enough protein in each meal to stimulate muscle protein synthesis fully. So if you really want to get if you really want to go to the science side of it, I would rather have more protein in a feeding. You know what I mean? Have a little bit more protein in a feeding. So I'll take it. I'd rather see them eat that 4 meals. And I know that people freak out about, the big one is hunger. People talk about.
Right.
Well, I'm hungry all the time. So, there are 2 things you could say about that. One is, are you physically hungry or are you psychologically hungry? Assuming they can, assuming they can tell the difference between the two and they are physically hungry. We have there's a couple of big hormones in ghrelin and leptin that have a lot of play here. So the big one with hunger is ghrelin, because ghrelin, what it does, it actually has the ability to adapt pretty quickly. It moves up and down a little bit quicker than leptin in most cases. So what I tend to notice with people is that hunger response. So if you eat if you eat 6 meals a day, you're going to be hungry when it's time to eat. If you eat 4 meals a day, you're going to be hungry when it's time to eat. And why? Because
awesome.
Yes. It's because your hormones, particularly the ghrelin that I talked about, it is adapting. It's adapting to that response. It's adapting to that meal timing, I should say. So yeah, you're going to adapt. And sure, if I've had people that they were doing the 7 meals a day or whatever, it was just way too stressful. They, or whatever reason we wanted to bring it down to 5 meals. Well, they might have had a day there where they felt like they were a little stretched out between meals. They were a little more hungry than usual, but about 2 days into that, they were perfectly fine. And they also found that, oh my gosh, they're not thinking about food all the time. Why? Because they're not eating every 2 hours. So the psychological hunger went down quite a bit. They could actually be more productive during the day and do more stuff that was important, And
oh yeah.
So for me, that was one of the biggest things. I think I used to eat. I never really went over 6, but I did go through phases where I would eat 6, and I just didn't find it practical with my schedule. And I found that, I was, even if my stomach wasn't growling or whatever, I always thought about food because I was used to eating so frequently. So that's one of the big benefits, I think, of lowering meal frequency a little bit, is actually just not being as hungry. I know that sounds weird, not as hungry and eat less often.
Well, you have to think exactly what you said. I didn't think about food as often. Well, when you're eating the 6, 7, 8 meals a day, you don't need to think about food because it's in front of you. So you have to think about food. That's exactly. And the last thing you should be putting on your mind, as we'll say, a contest prep, is food. In terms, you should not be exposed to, oh, it's this again. Let's say, for whatever reason, you are eating foods you don't necessarily like, but they're good for your digestion, whatever. It's not spices, whatever. Food's just not your thing right now. would you want to see food more, or would you want to see food less during your day if you don't really care for it and everything behind it at the minute? Of course you wouldn't want to see it as much. So exactly, just and the adaptation of that is so lightning quick, like you said, that 2 days thing, that's all it friggin' is that it happens so quick. They're like, oh, I'm going to be hungry. I'm like, well, yeah, of course. If you ate the cucumber, do you think you're going to get hungry in about an hour, if not less? Of course you are. But then there is too. Then there to go further into the diet psychology is that some people really enjoy the feeling of hunger, and I can tell you that during my bouts, like I was saying to you before we started recording, that I like to use like not necessarily a true form of intermittent fasting or whatever, but I'll wake up and I'll have my water, I'll do some cardio, and I'll like to wait as much as I can because I really enjoy eating most of my meals during the nighttime, or not necessarily the nighttime, but like we'll say the afternoon and night. And I'm not losing any muscle. I've got what do you call it, enough protein in my body stored from the night before. I'm not doing anything rigorous. I didn't do a really hard weight training session that's going to blow through my glycogen and need to have it be replenished or anything like that. And as you already said, we're not blowing through as much glycogen as we think anyways. Plus, when I do weight train, I am still eating before and after that anyways to replenish it already. So it's just such a, I don't even want to know if it's a fear culture. But the whole, like, you talk to people about catabolism, you would think it's like people running around outside with all their money clipped onto their sleeves, and that people just could run up and take away their muscle that easily. If you weight train and you weight train hard, your body, that is signaling to your body, we need this muscle. We have an actual demand from external stimulus, aka resistance training, to build, retain, and hold on to this muscle. So in here, and I'm going to call out people like crazy on this front in terms of what they might get upset about is if you are finding you're losing a significant amount of muscle and you are, we'll say, dieting or losing fat, and you find you are losing muscle, you're probably not training that hard. And I know that's kind of a side topic to the meal frequency, but like that's it. Like if your protein levels are good and your meal frequency is not two times a day or less, and that's what's going to dictate it. And like we already talked about that, the training intensity, but that goes hand in hand with this though, right? And it's like, oh, I've tried that diet, or like, oh, I've got to be catabolic because I don't have my essential aminos. It's like, nah, I want to investigate your wussness inside the gym right quick.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, I think there have been people that have kind of said that all along, just then use that logic of, yeah, if you're training hard enough and you're eating, all your protein, blah, 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 you're not going to lose tissue. And now, like I said, we talked about some of the actual science. I mean, now we have actual, like, scientific literature studies that show, hey, we really only need this much. I mean, and hey, I don't rely on science all the time, but I'm just saying, like, we have other literature to back up what we're saying now. And I have yet to see anyone have much of a different result from any of the different meal frequencies other than improving their digestion,
right?
Retaining their sanity, and and like I said, just being less stressed, having more time, less meal prep. So those, like I said, at the end of the day, it's really coming down to preference. It's really coming down to digestion, and I would say it's coming down to stress and just time, stress, schedule. However you want to lump all those things into that category.
Absolutely. And from the digestion standpoint too, like I know that it's not really, we'll say, dictated or given out widely in the bodybuilding world is dairy, and it's for a pretty darn good reason. And to go in a little bit into that is that most people don't know that dairy doesn't need stomach acid to break down. And that's where we get a lot of the issues when you said with digestion and all that, but with timing too. Is like, let's say, for instance, you wake up and you have Greek yogurt or you have cottage cheese, something else that has protein base or whatever. Your body is going to take at least 5 hours to process the dairy and then dump it. So if you put in something that needs stomach acid, such as a carbohydrate, most fats, and most carbohydrates, you are going to get a lot of stomach distress, and it's going to fight. Because you think about putting acid onto dairy, it is going to curdle. It's like warming up milk. So that's one of the number one things that I try to educate people right off the hop is because no, we don't as humans do well with dairy, period. Yes, people out there, I know there's lots of you say, hey, I do fine off of dairy. That's super cool. You keep having that damn dairy. But I always recommend if you are going to have the dairy, have it at nighttime so that you have your entire sleep to kind of flush it out. Because if you, I would say that the nightmare for digestion would be something like eggs and oatmeal in the morning, and then Greek yogurt the next meal, and then steak and sweet potatoes, and that is causing you some digestion nightmares during the day, and you won't only feel like crap, but then now your ghrelin and your everything is way off. Your hunger signaling is way off. Bloat is there. You're not going to feel good. You're probably gassy. Now your bowel movements per day are all messed up. So that's definitely one of the things to take into consideration. Why you would ever want to have some Greek yogurt and go train, because now you're trying to put a whole bunch of water on top of the Greek yogurt, which is going to do even more wacky stuff anyways. Like outside of whey protein, which even then whey protein and oatmeal, it works, and some people can do it okay, but a lot of that I get tons. As I used to do that, we'll say the typical weight gainer shake, like whey protein, oats, peanut butter blended together and drank. It worked, but I never really felt the best on it. And that was more probably because I had a cheaper source of protein powder or whatever like that. But that's one of the bigger things that I would recommend is just watch where and when your dairy is, if you even do choose to have it, especially during we'll say especially weight gain, because now you've got the volume of food is your stomach's never really empty. It's never really cleared, like you were talking about with the overlap of meals. So definitely something to take into consideration.
Yeah. So a lot of the hunger signaling, your body is pretty good about telling you when you need to eat, when you don't need to eat, telling you, I won't say that you could determine whether or not you're burning fat by whether or not you're hungry, but chances are, obviously you're going to have more hunger in a fat loss phase. But at the end of the day, if your digestion isn't right, your meals are overlapping, you're bloated, all that stuff, your hunger signaling is going to be off regardless. It doesn't matter if you're eating, 1,500 calories a day or 4,000 calories a day. It's not going to be correct. It's not going to give you a very clear picture of what your hunger is actually like. And for me, that's, for me as a coach, and I'm sure for you as well. I ask people, I use hunger as a biofeedback marker too. So if it's all out of whack, then that's one less thing that I can use to gauge, whatever progress I'm looking at or whatever nutrition I'm looking at. So digestion, and we're going to have to do an episode on that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. That's obviously a huge aspect of this meal frequency. And with digestion, when we do talk about that, we can talk about food selection, because that's, obviously that's going to be,
for sure,
that's going to be biggie. I have a ton of opinions on that.
I'm already pumped for this one. I'm pumped for this. I know we're doing this one. I'm jacked up about this one. I'm already jacked up about that one. I love it. Yeah.
It's a topic that I'm really passionate about, and because I think that it makes such a huge difference. And now I'm pretty much, I don't know about you, but I'm pretty much wrapped up on the meal timing thing at the moment. So
absolutely, me too. Because that's the thing. There's so little to say. If you were to say to people, hey, pick that 3 to 7 meals, grab the foods that work for you, make sure you don't feel like crap, your training feels good. And then because people, no, because that's why the name of it's so good. Meal timing made sexy, because it's not.
Yeah.
So, sorry, boys and girls, outside of, if you want to, maybe we could talk about the during post-workout stuff if you guys really wanted to, but I would say don't cheap out on that stuff. Especially if you're going to get because we've already talked about, but I really don't like branch chains anymore. The overwhelming amount of science is pushing everything towards either essential amino acids or hydrolyzed casein. It's all there. We don't need to even have a really big discussion about that, but have something high quality for that. I'm not going to necessarily recommend any brands yet, but they're out there. If you do want to use some kind of pre-workout, we've already talked about stimulants and stuff like that before. You can use them. Don't go absolutely bananas. Cycle them. For post-workout stuff, don't go crazy on it. And just like Austin said, I am exactly like you, buddy. I have my full we'll say real food now. I don't want a shake
Yep.
because it does. I'd much rather eat, which fills me up better, which doesn't make me feel more like a friggin' science experiment. When I had the pre-workout shake, the during workout shake, the post-workout shake, I felt like a water balloon by the end of it. And all of that, but then to really get a lot of these pre-workouts, the during workouts to be more effective, you need a high volume of liquid, and that's just I'm not a big guy. Like it feels terrible to have to get all that volume in there, especially let alone in that time. But it's one of those things is that focus on that absolutely last. And I know you'll hear a lot of people out there that really put that as the emphasis of the training, is that take away all food from around everything else and really put it on the pre, during, and post workout. And if that works for you, that is super cool. Even if that's psychological for you, that's still super cool. Just don't make it overcomplicated. You do not need 50 different tubs that you're pouring into your mammoth mug or whatever other gigantic jug that you have that we want to look super cool in the gym with, right?
Your Brad Martin jug.
Absolutely right, with 5% with 5% on the side and everything else, right? Yeah. So just it's like keep it simple for that stuff, and just like I don't know how many times we need to say it over and over again. Just don't stress about it. And that's all I really have to say on that, Austin. That's it.
Yep. I would agree. I think we pretty much covered it, and figure out what works for you and go from there.
Okay, man. You want to wrap it up?
Yeah, I'm good. Like I said, we'll definitely do a whole topic on digestion, but that is it for today, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you for listening to the Mind Body broadcast. We'll be back next time, definitely bringing the information on digestion and then if it fits your macros and what it really means. Goodbye.